Okay, hello everyone. Again, I'm talking to myself. This is for the YouTube video, so I'm just going to invite Stefan. Stefan, there we go. Invitation sent. So hopefully Stefan should join. Hello to anyone who's joined. Thank you. Looking forward to this one. Looking forward to. Okay. So. Stefan, send a request to join. I've invited you. Stefan, if you're listening, request to join. There he is. Hey Fabio, thanks for my lunch. Hey!
Hello.
We worked it out. Cool, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks, Gary. Good to see you.
Yeah, seems a bit weird to do this because like you're sitting in your house, which is like half a kilometre away.
Just around the corner.
Yeah, we could have just done it in the same room the old-fashioned way, but then it wouldn't technically be an Instagram live, would it?
No.
No. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me, mate. Yeah, we've had quite a lot of interest for this one. Obviously, a lot of CNF-based questions, surprisingly, because you quite like that, don't you? Yeah. So yeah, I've got a list of a few questions. We'll just crack on with it, and then we'll talk a little bit about life and what you've got coming up and things like that. So yeah, right. Without further ado, I don't know where we should start. Let's start on that question that Ilias threw at us today at the Blue Hole.
The static one.
It's quite interesting. So, you know, I know technically this is the EQ sessions, but there's so much overlap. This question has some overlap into EQ, also general freediving fitness. So Ilias is asking, does having a really massive static make dives easier, especially in CNF? What do you think?
Yeah, I really liked this morning when we were at the Blue Hole. I really liked Sean's reply, when he said, "Yeah, it's probably better than having a 2-minute static."
Yeah. Yeah.
So static. I had this period thing was like 4 or 5 years ago. I started doing a lot of static, like max attempts, and really wanted to see what is possible. Lost a lot of weight, and yeah, got to like 8.5 minutes, and then at some point I found like it didn't go very well with the deep dive training anymore, because I lost a lot of muscle and weight, and but then I found like I think something that happened mentally was that I was much more confident going into the depth sessions, like knowing that you have a strong breath hold, and so the relaxation was just a little bit a different one, just having that confidence.
Yeah.
And then later on, I would say now the last 2-3 years in depth training and focusing more on no fins, I found that static became like a really, really important part of my training, and mainly with the idea of delaying contractions at depth.
Yeah.
Because no fins, deep no fins, and that whole movement of the upper body and using a lot of like muscles that surround the lungs when you swim, plus contractions, not the best. So I had some minor squeezes like below 70 no fins, and that's when I really started working on delaying contractions, removing contractions, softening contractions through static training. So like these last years now, a lot of static training, but almost no max attempts, like all with the idea of improving hypoxic thresholds and hypercapnic capacities, and increasing that comfortable part of the hold Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because this is where that question perfectly crosses into, you know, EQ, doesn't it? Because if you're able to sort of delay contractions by having a good static, you can make your EQ. I mean, arguably in no fins, it's the hardest discipline to EQ in, really. The CO2 you generate, certainly for me, the amount of CO2 I generate is makes it very hard to hold on to a mouthfeel. So yeah, I like that crossover. And I don't train pool much anymore, but when I was in the UK, I was in the pool 2 or 3 times a week for quite a few years. So I know the benefit of static, even though now it doesn't take up much of my training cycle. I don't do much, but I really enjoy it. Yeah, I like static. So were you actually like fasting and stuff? You said you lost a lot of weight when you were doing a lot of static.
I would say I was not specifically fasting, but I was skipping meals because of training. So I would do a lot of static training, and that usually meant eating very little in the evening, and then usually skipping breakfast. And I was not doing any strength training back then. It was actually during COVID, during the COVID lockdown in the Philippines. So that little private pool was the only water we had access to. So that's how we spent a lot of time doing static, which was very interesting.
Develop static.
No.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. So is there anything other, like, because for me, I'm not hugely experienced with no fins, but I was a breaststroker, so I know that the technique is kind of the easier part for me. Is there anything else that you did to train yourself to reduce those contractions? So obviously you did some static, and that was more. Is that more of a mental game rather than bringing your fitness up?
Yes. So there is the physiological part, no. But what I found for myself, I found that very interesting, is that I noticed, and it took me quite a long time to figure out, is that I was actually making the contractions, you know. So would be quite consistent with that start of the first like involuntary contractions until I noticed, like, if I really focus, I can remove those contractions, or they become very, very subtle, very small. It doesn't feel very good. It doesn't feel very pleasant because it's actually making the contractions that gives you that illusion of shifting air around, of breathing, and actually makes you feel better. But then I think it's possible to get used to that quickly, is to really softening the contractions and keeping them really, really small. So I think a big part I found for me was, like the psychological part of it, that you don't have to make those contractions, right? What also helped was a lot of statics on exhale, FRC holds, RB holds, to basically simulate the deeper part of a dive, when there's less air in the lungs, and again, going through that phase without having contractions.
Would you be doing any of those? Like, I presume you're doing like a table. You said you weren't really doing max attempts or anything, so it's table-based training. Would you be doing any of those with like a mouthful of air to simulate holding on to your air or anything like that?
Probably should have.
That might be a nice addition to make
it's a good idea. Good idea. Probably difficult combining little air in the lungs, breath hold, CO2 plus equalization. It's challenging.
That's interesting. Anything else? What are your thoughts on like having a higher level of like cardiovascular fitness? Because one of the main sort of measures of true fitness is how quickly your heart rate returns to base level from max. So I guess in theory it would make sense if you could be extremely cardiovascularly fit. Would that help with, you raise your heart rate, you generate CO2 in the first 20 meters of a no-fins dive? Would that help you then bring the heart rate down? Have you ever experimented with that?
Yeah, I'm still undecided with the you know, aerobic part, and these days I was discussing that with Alenka and with Thea,
Yeah.
and we're talking about that. Does it make sense or not? For static, definitely. You know, just to have like a lower resting heart rate. I can just, like, from my experience, I've tried, and I never felt that aerobic fitness made a lot of difference in my diving.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt the difference, like overall health. You know, you feel fit. You can maybe deal easier with working and teaching and
Yeah.
just overall fitness. But in terms of actual deep diving, I never felt like that made a difference. I
Yeah.
felt bigger differences with more like high intensity anaerobic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. No, I'm trying to make notes because, like, one day I keep saying to myself, "Oh, I'd like to have another go at seeing what my no fins could be." So yeah, this is a very informative phone call. Cool. Well, right, Ilias, thank you, mate. That's a really good question. We could talk for a lot on that question. Actually, there's a lot of
Yeah.
sort of avenues that you could go down. But let's move on because we've got loads of other questions. Fru sent in a good question, and a really relevant question. She says winter is coming, so any tips or insights on training during this season, because everybody's wearing thicker wetsuits, and it's, you know, for no fins, you kind of want to be wearing as thin as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? What to do during the winter, thick suits, and all of that. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's very difficult to do deep dives with thick suits on because you have that much larger difference between positive and negative buoyancy. But I think we can use that to our advantage. So if you are training no fins and you have a thick suit on, it can be interesting to do shallow sessions, technical sessions, and use that thick suit you have and just you know, incorporate it into a drill. What I did a lot during winter months is diving without weights, just working on the descent, which is one of the most complex parts of the dive. And again, it goes very well together with equalization, like loading CO2 on the way down, managing to equalize. And then when the water gets warmer and you put the thinner suit on, you're flying through the water, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no fins without weights. What I personally do a lot over the winter is hangs with, so basically focus on breath hold. And then it doesn't matter if you have a thick suit and a lot of weights on, doing shallow hangs, long dives, equalization drills. I think the winter is a perfect time to kind of iron out and experiment with equalization, breath hold, technique. You can do so much in shallow water.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my early days of freediving, I fell into the trap of thinking you just need the deep water. You need, you know, but now like 80% of my training is in 35 meters of water.
Yeah.
You know, the vast majority of it. Yeah. It's always a shame when someone, like, not a shame, but when someone comes like in January for a few weeks training with me and they love no fins, but you know, they want to see some progress. They want to get a new number on their watch or whatever. But they're having to wear a 5 mil suit. It's like, it's challenging.
Yeah, we just had this case last week. We had this no-fin workshop with Katrina together, and we had one of the students was wearing a 5 mil suit. I don't remember, with a lot of weights on, and it was really difficult. On the last day, he put a 2 millimeter suit on and immediately added like 5 meters. You know, so it was so much easier. Also, mobility, you know, all of that.
Yeah, it depends how deep they're going as well. Because I mean, I've done fairly deep 80s, 90s with a 5 mil suit. They're not nice at depth. You know, they become heavy and they become very baggy, and I don't like that. Coming up, no fins. Not many people are doing 80s and 90s in a 5 mil suit, but you know, coming up from 40 or 50 with a 5 mil suit is not great. Okay, good question. Thank you, Fru. Um, okay, there's another one from Marce Avila Lopez. He's asking about tips for practicing CNF EQ on land. So I don't know if we can say like distinguish like CNF EQ and constant weight EQ, but there are some differences with no fins, you know, elevated CO2 and stuff. Is there anything specific that you've sort of found that really helps you with your no fins EQ wise?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, maybe it's interesting to ask yourself like what makes equalization and no fins different from the other disciplines or more challenging, and I think it comes down to the movement. Obviously there's much more in action, which means you create a lot more CO2, and that CO2 like the job of CO2 is to make you breathe, and it loosens the lock of the glottis, and that comes with all kinds of problems, as we know. So then that movement of the upper body, right, the arms, the arm strokes, the relaxation is just maybe not the same as if you would do bifins or free immersion, where the relaxation is a much better one. So yeah, I mean, and then how to simulate that dry. I mean, there is, you already gave the example, right? You could try to combine like classic EQ exercises and add CO2 to it. So you could do drills on breath hold, on exhales, on FRC, whether it's mouth fill or bubble tower, you know, all these things, and just add CO2 to it. I wanted to mention one exercise that I really like. It's not very specific to CNF, but I really like it for equalization. So for me, it's like stress is a big factor, right? And swimming CNF, it is like you create a bit of stress, right? You're in action, you're moving, and you have to keep your eyes open to see where the line is. And there's a lot of things to do, so it is stress. And an exercise that I really like, which I do every day, in the shower, I have a nose clip which hangs in the shower, and every time I take a shower, I put on that nose clip, and I do 3-4 FRC holds, short holds with a mouth fill, and then point the shower head in my face, just creating stress basically. And it's, well, if you try it, it's really not easy. It's at least for me, it was quite a challenge in the beginning. The trick is to stay really relaxed, keep the belly nice and soft, and while having that stress in your face, right? To make it even more challenging, you could add temperature changes.
Go from warm to ice cold.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you ever do like tables in CNF? I know you do. Tables in depth, you know. What are those? What's the aim of those? Is that general fitness, or are you training like EQ with CO2? Because it's something I like to get people to do sometimes. Is the 5x20, like the instructor qualification? You do this, and the focus is on keeping your EQ. You know, what do you use that?
That table, I would say it's one of the key exercises to deep no fins and equalization. I think it's the most important one. At least for me, it's the one that I feel like gave me the most. So it's 5 dives. Could start with, like, depending on what your level of diving is, you could do 5x15, 5x20. I would go maximum 5x25. I would not go deeper than that. But yeah, let's say you do 5x20 no fins. First of all, you get very nice volume, right? It's 5 dives, and you go through that most complex part of the dive where you're busy with duck diving and the first few cycles. And now the trick is it's really about equalization, because just doing 5 20-meter dives physically is not so difficult, right? Okay, there might be a bit of contractions, but it's not a difficult table. The trick is to duck dive, charge, and try and maintain that mouthfeel down to 20 through the discomfort of the CO2 and maybe even the contractions.
Yeah.
And to learn to really disconnect all that discomfort that comes with the CO2 and what's happening up here with the equalization. Yeah. I remember when I first tried it, it was a big mess. Like my mouthfeel was going like up and down and was just trying to do something. And then very quickly, like you do that a few times, you will really learn to disconnect and have a smooth equalization while having contractions or tension building up. Yeah. So I think this is a really good exercise. I would ease into it, let's say 5 times 20, maybe start with an interval of 2 minutes and then slowly work your way down to maybe 145, 130. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like it is violating the surface intervals that we teach, right? So if you do it in a session, I would not combine it with any deep diving. I would like make it a shallow session, technical session. Yeah. But yeah, that's a great one.
Awesome. I'm excited to go out and try that now.
You could even do it, and you know, it's also a very nice drill with if you work on bifins, to do it with short snorkeling fins. I think I've never done it in free immersion, but in the constant weight disciplines, I think it's a great drill.
Yeah, I think free immersion you'd have to have a slightly longer rope and probably much shorter intervals because you generate so little CO2. But yeah, if you're specializing in free immersion, then just think yourself lucky that you're potentially using the easiest discipline EQ wise.
There is also, like, there was another table that William told me about once. He was like, he told me, okay, if you can do 3 times 25 with just 1 breath in between, I'll buy you dinner. And I thought, like, how hard can it be, you know? First dive obviously is fine, second one is kind of okay, and the third one is just impossible. But yeah, I think it's nice to have a bit more volume, 5 dives with longer interval. Yeah,
that's good. 3 times 25. That sounds petrifying. Yeah, I did one no fins training session at the start of the summer, just trying to work out what I wanted to do at the World Championship. And yeah, I remember saying to Carlos, "Oh, like no fins is really hard." And he said, "What were you doing?" And I was doing repeats of 40. And he's like, "Of course it's hard, you idiot, because you're doing repeats of 40." He was like, "Doing repeats of 25 to start with." So yeah, I kind of killed myself in a session. I did like 4 or 5 40s with no fins.
It's very interesting, like when you come, like for you, when you come from constant weight and you are used to these very big numbers, it's for me it's now the other way around, because I've been doing so much no fins, and now these past sessions I've put on the monofin, did some dives with the monofin, and suddenly the numbers are much bigger, and it's quite interesting, like how your perception to the numbers changes with the different disciplines.
Because I wasn't used to that, because I did monofin for 10 years, 12 years, and it's only really this year, the start of this year, that I started to really test my bifins and stuff. You have to change your thinking a little bit, don't you? Okay. Another awesome question. That was brilliant. Here's one that is interesting, from TK. What's your opinion on the little dolphin kick in the no fins cycle? What do you think?
Dolphin kick in no fins. Yeah, it's a very technical question, and I can just give you my opinion. I think with a dolphin kick, I think there's two situations where we see the dolphin kick. There is the situation where divers really go and say, okay, I want to do this. I want to add a dolphin kick into my stroke cycle to get a bit more push. Like we've seen this dive that Alexei did a few years ago, where he's basically started dolphin kicking right after the turn.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh my God, this is how we have to do no fins now. But I think it was just that one dive.
Yeah.
So yeah, to do it on purpose. But I think what we see much more is that the dolphin kick is something that happens to divers as a movement to compensate like a breaking down of the technique because of fatigue, or to compensate a loss of posture. So you have in the no fin stroke, right? You have the arm stroke that comes down on the sides, and then you have the little push in the front, like that triceps extension.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you need a bit of core. Like you need to engage the core to stay straight and to maintain posture. And if you don't do that, if the core is weak, or when you get tired at the end of a dive, what happens is that you kind of fold. So I'm sure you've seen this, right? So there's the push in the front and the legs come forward.
Right.
Always compare it to, when you do pull-ups and you get tired and you get that last one, the legs come up in the front.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Like when you lose core strength. And when that happens, I think a lot of divers instinctively, they do this little flick, like this little dolphin kick to engage the core to prevent that folding, like to prevent the legs from coming to the front. And I think that's why we often see it at the end of dives. And I think it's not so much that divers say, oh, I'm getting tired, let's add the dolphin kick, but it's more something that happens because of that loss of core strength. I think it's not much use, so I would not do it on purpose. I would not say, okay, let's add a dolphin kick to be more efficient.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the large amount of muscles you use to do a proper dolphin kick, and what you get out of it, it's very different in a pool, right? If you are deep and you are heavy, I think a dolphin kick doesn't do very much. So my opinion personally is to avoid it and to stay straight.
Yeah, it can give good propulsion. Like again, I'm not sure in depth because your weight changes so much in the water column. But certainly in a pool, moving horizontally, it can give really good propulsion, but there's nothing economical about it at all. It's it's part of my pool training that I do for monofin. Is I do sprint laps with no fins on. Monofin technique, and you do 25 with no fins on breath hold, and about it. It's hard, but it's a good way to develop all the muscles in the chain that you need to drive yourself. And you watch, there's swimmers. There's plenty of videos of swimmers doing just a barefooted dolphin kick, and there's one famous video of the guy winning the backstroke race because he did the whole length.
He did the whole length, so that you get disqualified, right?
Sorry.
But you get disqualified in swimming, no?
I think he did it to prove a point. He knew he was going to get disqualified, but he absolutely destroyed the competition. It was quite amazing to see. Yeah. Do you have the same kind of feeling? Did you see the Croatian boys doing this sculling thing with their hands on the way down at the Worlds
during the free fall, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's no real utility.
Yeah, at least I would say not for means of propulsion. Maybe I don't know why he doesn't for steering. I remember Sayuri used to do it as well. He came from synchronized swimming, so there was a lot of that little adjustments with the hands. But it was again just adjusting posture during the free fall.
Interesting. So. You mentioned earlier you did your workshop with Kat.
Yeah.
How did it go?
It was amazing. It so much fun.
Yeah.
I was, to be honest, I was skeptical because we have different ways of swimming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like technique is a little different. And I thought, okay, are we going to be on the same page when it comes to technique? But it was really interesting because we were talking of, like, we were basically breaking down the no-fin stroke, and we both had things to add, and I think it was really nice. It was good fun.
Yeah. And you have another one coming up.
Yeah, we have the next one will be in the deep spot in Poland, mid-February.
Wow.
Which will be a challenge because it's fresh water. So that will be different. But then we definitely want to do this again here in Dahab. No-fins is really booming, and there are a lot of people that wanted to join the workshop when it was already full. So yeah, I think as soon as the water is not so cold anymore, then maybe April, May, we'll have the next one.
Just don't do it when I'm in the middle of a teaching period, because I really want to do it, but I was too busy for this one. So is there still spots for the deep spot course?
Deep spot, we haven't even announced it yet.
Oh,
we have the idea,
no.
and we might make it just a one-day seminar with 2 depth sessions and theory and dry practice, because there you can go diving 10 o'clock in the evening. So we might make it like one long day because people are working and
yeah. Oh wow, awesome. I could see myself a little. I've never been to deep spot. It would be really cool to go there with you guys. Yeah.
And it's really strange because you do a duck dive and 1 stroke and then you free fall.
Yeah.
The way up is.
Have you ever done deep dives in fresh water?
No.
Because I've got maybe an opportunity to go to a very deep lake in Nicaragua this next year.
I got the email today from Thomas about Nicaragua, and he asked. Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, but I couldn't imagine being down at 70 or 80 in fresh water and how that would feel. You have to take it very carefully.
I'm not sure because this is special, no, in Nicaragua there, because it's fresh water, but it's warm water, which is a combination you don't find a lot.
Yeah, 28 all the way down. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, nice one to go to after VB anyway. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So all right, we should probably, as this is called the EQ sessions, actually get back to a question about EQ.
Was it?
So Webben216, they are saying, as a beginner, they're quite good with hands-free. Should they stick to it, or should they start to learn Frenzel?
Okay.
What's your opinion?
Yeah. Congrats on being able to do hands-free.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, congrats. Nice one. Showing off.
My opinion, yeah, I would say it's an amazing skill to have. I wish I could have like a reliable hands-free. But I think even though it's a really nice skill, I think it will fail eventually. So if you have the ambition to go deeper, it will probably, if it's a good BTV, if it's like proper hands-free, probably, like from what I see with people, like I guess it takes you a bit further than the classic Frenzel. But I think it will fail eventually, and then if you want to go deeper, you will have to change to like active pressurization, advanced equalization techniques, mouthfeel or whatever. So my opinion would be hands-free. It's great, but I would suggest to maybe slowly, like parallel to the hands-free, get started with Frenzel, just to build, like to lay that foundation, so that one day when you want to switch to a mouthfeel or something, you have that base, that foundation of Frenzel already.
Yeah.
And then you can still use the hands-free to support or to ease the mouthfeel and the Frenzel, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and especially with what you're saying about at some point the hands-free will fail, and the problem is it's not failing at 10, it's failing at 50.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
depending on the diver, but most hands-free people who are hands-free from birth, they like they never learn how to frenzel, so they get to this point when they're deep under some stress, physical stress, and they run out of air, so they kind of do something. And I've noticed a definite link.
There's no plan B.
There's no plan B. Yeah, I've noticed a definite link between hands-free people and trachea squeeze. I noticed it anecdotally here maybe 2 winters ago. I was just hearing of at least 5 or 6 hands-free people who were getting repeated trachea squeezes. And it's something I'll ask Federico Manna next week about. And I spoke to him about it. I said to him, do you think there's a correlation? And he agreed, you know, there's a correlation between hands-free people getting to the limit and then actually injuring their trachea with a little barotrauma. So yeah, as you say, it's a really wonderful, useful skill. And there's one person in 1,000 that can take it down to 80 meters, 90 meters. Good for you. Most people can't. So I would start playing with frenzel, definitely. Yeah. Have you ever played with learning hands-free?
Yeah, definitely. Because I had this. I used to have these issues with the mouthfeel of swallowing and squeaking and losing air. And what I was always being told was to work on my glottis strength. Right. Which I think now that's a little bit like the old school approach, right? Make your glottis stronger if you're losing air. And it didn't really address the actual problem, which was 2 things. Like, first of all, tense belly, right? So there's that kind of suction from below, and plus on top of that, applying way too much pressure for the equalization. It was actually because like the question that we had in the beginning, right? Like being able to take dry equalization exercises, like why do they not work in the water? These things are easy to do dry, and then once you're in the water, you have all these things like tense belly and equalizing with too much pressure when there's a bit of stress. So it was actually like easing or like minimizing the pressure for equalization, kind of solve the problem. And then I was working on learning how to do hands-free, which was really, really helpful. I still can't do it reliably, but I can do it to an extent where it supports the mouthfeel, where I need very little pressure to equalize. So for me now, during the free fall, it's like a mantra, like gentle with the equalization and relax the belly. Those 2. And then there's no more squeaking.
That's great. Yeah. Would you typically, if you're going for a PB or a maximum depth no fins, would you typically get some slips of air moving out of the mouth, or have you managed to, if everything's going right, have you managed to get rid of that?
Back into the lungs, you mean?
Yeah, or lung, stomach, whatever. Is it, if you're going for 70-something no fins,
Usually not.
Right.
No, usually not. If I'm relaxed, no. Maybe sometimes in competition, if I'm stressed,
Yeah.
It can be like 1 or 2 little squeaks, but yeah. Like, especially here in the blue hole, where we don't have any changes in temperature and it's a very relaxed environment, it's usually no problems.
It was like a 1 degree or 2 degree change in temperature today. I felt it down at 25. It got a bit cold.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit, tiny bit.
Around the arch, or
no, a bit shallower than that. I didn't go deeper than 35 today with my students. So yeah, shallower than that. Yeah. I just wrote a little note about what you said about strengthening the glottis, and I think this is what you said about it being a bit old school thinking. I totally agree, because we still use the words, "Oh, my glottis is weak." So that says on the flip side of that coin, we should be strengthening the glottis, but it's kind of like probably weak glottis is not the correct term, because I've never trained my glottis. You don't train your glottis like you train your bicep. There's no resistance training for the glottis.
I think it's already strong enough to deal with everything we throw at it on a deep dive.
So it's more for me, it's more awareness of it, and then like those two, real pillars of equalization is reduce the pressure up here and learn to properly disconnect all the respiratory muscles, all the muscles in the abs from the whole process.
Then there is, of course, maybe as a third one, there is, again, in offense, there is the whole story of CO2, right? That CO2 can weaken that lock. Yeah, and you feel it on the 5x20. You feel it on the 4th or 5th dive when the CO2 is high. You might get a bit of leaking, and then again, it's a really good exercise at that point to remind yourself to stay super gentle, to manage, to hold on to the mouth.
Too much pressure up here, not relaxed down here, and the poor old glottis is stuck in the middle of this like tug of war. Sometimes it can't win. Awesome. Oh man, I'm learning so much. I'm going to have to watch this back and make notes. Okay, let's have another look at some of the questions. Well, actually, there's a question. I don't know. Maybe we just sort of answered it, but Jian was asking about best dry exercises to preserve your mouthfeel, aka glottis control. I think he means dry exercises to be hanging on to mouthfeel. I think potentially we've answered that, haven't we? With static tables with perhaps the mouth open, or static tables with a mouthful of air. And then generally I would get people doing drills where they're going very light on EQ, very, very light, like even allowing the ears to close up, just to build some sensitivity, in a perfect world. In a perfect world that would work. But there's so many other things. Okay.
There is a thought I had, which just recently about, because we often see people get this squeaking or losing air in the deeper parts of the dive, and maybe when they transition to the tongue, with the mouthfeel. And I have this idea, like, so when you have the EQ tool, right, and you measure the spikes of pressure you apply, it takes a certain amount of pressure to open up the ears. It takes a much lower pressure to hold them open, and you equalize constantly. And I think what we are used to doing when equalizing sequentially with the classic Frenzel, when we learned freedive, are these quite high spikes, like to open up the tubes every time. And I think that can be a reason why many people, when they start with a mouthfeel and then they transition into the tongue, they fall back into that pattern of like quite forceful Frenzel equalizations. Even though it's a constant pressure and there's no need to hold the pressure that high, maybe there is that muscle memory of, okay, now it's the tongue and the tongue has to push that hard. And that's the deep part of the dive now, when the lungs are small and there is that pressure gradient. Especially then, I think it's super important to stay super careful with how much pressure we apply.
I very often, I've described it to my guys today, actually, like a graph. So the top line would be full power pressure, and the bottom line would be absolutely nothing. And I keep my EQ kind of floating in the middle a little bit. So I'm always, I describe it like I'm massaging my ears, I'm just holding them open, and when I need a little bit more, I can just give a little flick when I need it. And then if everything's clear, when I'm very deep, like I don't know if you've ever played around very deep, stop equalizing at 80 and see how far you can go. It's amazing how far the pressure gradient changes. So this kind of, I'm never full on power, but I'm never completely stopping. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's nice. It also keeps me very engaged in the dive. It gives me something small, not too difficult, not too easy, something small to focus on. And it's a very nice way to pass the time on a free fall to 100, for example. You know, because you do need something to do. Hey, ciao, Davide. Davide's just joined. Yeah. Okay. There's a few like general questions that I've really been asking all the people coming on, and it's quite. I like it. Do you have anything specific, diet-wise, nutrition, any sort of real cornerstones that you always stick to? Anything you must eat or you mustn't eat? Any kind of rules for?
No, I would say I'm quite flexible when it comes to nutrition. In general, I eat healthy. I eat very little meat. I I would say very little fats. Yeah, I mean it's a lot of Japanese food.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I eat a lot of rice, but yeah, like nothing specific. I would say in general, just balanced and healthy. Yeah.
So do you purposefully avoid fats, like all fats, like nuts, avocados, good fats, nice fats?
No, like unsaturated fats, like good fats for sure.
Yeah,
super important. But
just
like
avoiding
saturated
those
fats, I
kinds of
try
chicken.
to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty simple. Okay. Did you ever do any other sports?
Uh, I used to do gymnastics long time ago.
Cool.
Yeah,
Wow, that's a tough sport. Yeah.
but that was a long time ago, and yeah, got some problem. I had problems with my back, so yeah, I stopped when I was quite
Yeah,
young.
gymnastics
But,
training is pretty extreme. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, actually, it might be nice to talk about the competition a little bit. You know, we've got a competition day after tomorrow. I mean, you could probably talk for an hour on this, but like, how's your preparation been? Say, let's say in the last month, like, you know, what have you been doing? I know you've been doing a bit of work. We've obviously got
Yeah, it's been a really turbulent month, like super busy, and I really wanted, like my initial plan was to really try the to try 81 no fins in the comp here. I thought would be nice, you know, I don't have to travel, I can do it here.
Yeah.
To do it in the blue hole would be perfect. But I think I was a bit overly confident about it. I thought, okay, I will just do this dive, you know, I will do a couple of training sessions and just build up to it. But I stopped pool training. I still went to the gym. I was quite sloppy with my dry training, and I took on quite a lot of work this month. And when I started the no-fin dives, I got to like the mid-70s, and dives were fine. But then I felt like 80 is going to be a stretch this time. So yeah, it was like and then we did the workshop with Kat, which was super nice, but it was also a lot of work. So it was like now it's like a last minute change of plans. I thought, okay, let's maybe do some dives with the monofin for immersion and go for overall, you know. Why not? And I'll keep the no fins for for next year. I really feel like with these deep no fin dives, let's say like deeper than 75, I really need to have like a good foundation in base training, and it's not dives that I can just build up to by just diving deep. You know, I need to have a foundation in the pool and dry and in the gym, and that I need to take a bit of time for that. So next year.
Yeah, next year, 81. All right, I look forward to that. Yeah. That's interesting. Would you like closer to a comp, like if you have the perfect training period and everything, you know, no work, just diving, would you bring in like high intensity stuff closer to a peaking period?
High intensity, as in
interval training, or something a bit less resistance based but more like sprint based, or any sort of interval? Have you ever experimented with that? It's something I'm looking at.
I don't.
Because all
No,
the
I
theory
don't.
says it would be very good.
I'm sorry?
I think all the theory around it says that it should be very good, but
Yeah.
yeah, the only issue with me, it burns me out quite a lot. It's quite heavy on the nervous system, you know,
Mm.
high intensity stuff. Yeah.
No, like to build up to a peak in a discipline like Northlands, I usually take 3 months. Like 3 months is usually my time for a cycle. And I combine training with work for the first 2 months, and then it's usually that last 3-4 weeks where I take completely off if I can, normally.
Yeah.
And that's also usually when I dial down on intensity and focus more on just putting everything together. Quality dives, short sessions, very light gym sessions those last weeks. Yeah, and like the high intensity stuff, I usually do it more in the, I would say, midsection of that pyramid. So like second month. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy the last few years. I've really started to think of my year as a complete 12-month plan, and
Okay.
planning a lot further ahead. I didn't really do that. I thought it was enough in the past just to keep a general good level of fitness. But also, I like having a plan because it kind of gives you something. Okay, this month we're changing. We're working towards this. Next month we're going to change again. I think it gives more of a sense of progress. You know.
Yeah. And when you are teaching full time, you have to plan ahead. Like you have to take your training, and you really have to create blocks of work and training, and when can we combine the two, and when do we have to keep them separate? I think it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some other sort of EQ questions from the other weeks, but I think they're nice to hear everyone's view on them. Really, there's another little technical one, and this is a question that does come up a lot. It's how deep should you be able to Frenzel before making the switch to mouthfeel? Do you have an opinion on that? When would you move someone over?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I would maybe check first, like what type of Frenzel is it? Are people getting air up with an abdominal contraction? Because that's how it was for me. I was diving, and I was always wondering, like, why do I have these contractions on the way down? Be like this little hiccup every 5 meters, you know.
Yeah.
Until I noticed, and it took me a very long time to figure out that it was actually linked to equalization. So I would get my hands to my nose, and then there would be that little contraction, which was like an instinctive, like little push to bring up air. And that failed very early for me. That failed at like 33, 35. There was no more air coming up. Whereas when people pull up air, do like little reverse packs, I think it should take them a bit further, maybe closer to 40 or even deeper. So for me, it would be interesting to figure out, like, how do people get air for their Frenzel? But yeah, I would definitely not teach a mouthfeel for people that are diving less than 30, 35.
Yeah.
I think 35, 40, that's a nice range. But also it depends, you know, if the Frenzel is still working and they can manage, then maybe you can get started with a mouthfeel, but you can explore maybe a bit further. I think it should be that order, no? Like to fine tune the Frenzel, and then find that really deep relaxation to take it as far as we can. And then once that's all mastered, then comes the mouthfeel. Because I believe that if you learn the mouthfeel too early and it works, you have all that air here, you could potentially mask or cover up a lack of relaxation.
Yeah.
Right. So like you skip that step of really find, like, it's a kind of cliche. We always say you have to relax more, but it's really how it is, no? Like, because with the normal Frenzel, if you don't relax, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I love that. I love that point. So for me, you know, it's not so important as to what depth they're taking Frenzel to. It's more like how they're taking Frenzel down, and what type of Frenzel they're using. So I think, and the point you said about perhaps masking or hiding a lack of relaxation, just because you manage to get air and you can sort of, as long as you can hold on to it, you can muscle down and really open up your depth by considerable in a weekend if you pick up mouthfeel quick.
Yeah.
And that's what's, you know, probably if we had data from when Eric Fatah published his document and the incidences of squeezes, you'll probably see a huge jump just after.
Yeah, and that's the thing now when instructors say like, yeah, the mouthfeel is this bad technique because it's causing all the squeezes. It's not. It's just how you use it and when you use it, and do you cover up other problems with it, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about that link between the contraction and EQ, because there's a question actually from Martin Petrus, who I don't, you'll probably meet him. I don't know if you know. Do you know Martin?
Yeah, I know Martin.
Yeah. I kept skipping it, and he sent this in weeks ago, but I never ended up asking. He says when he does mouthfeel, he tenses his chest when he equalizes. So he's asking for ways to separate this, and so I think there's a connection. Like
on purpose.
Yeah, there's no, it's not on purpose. I think he tenses the chest up when he's mouthfeeling. So there's some sort of tension there, and I'm wondering whether, like you said, the EQ is linked to an abdominal contraction. So potentially his EQ is linked to an abdominal contraction as well.
Yeah, it could be, you know, like it could be that maybe he's charging a mouthfeel, but maybe he's still bypassing it with still reloading or bringing up air from the lungs is not completely disconnected yet, maybe, because there should be no need to tense up anything once you've taken the charge.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'll mention to him that we finally spoke about his question. That hour has flown by.
Is it already?
Yeah, we're a couple of minutes away. So, like, what have you got going on? What's life got in store for you over the next few months? Then you obviously this week you've got a competition. Oh, Dan's just joined. Hey, Dan. Obviously you've got a competition this week to deal with. Once that's out of the way, what's the next few months got planned for you?
Yeah, it's funny because I was 2024 for me was like I have no idea what's going to happen, and now over the last 2-3 weeks everything came together, and now the first half year of 2024 is pretty much full now. And a few little competitions. There will be the deep spot in February. Planning to go to Faza in Dubai in March.
Wow.
So it's like these comps that kind of motivate me to work on breath hold over the winter, hangs and all of that. And then a few workshops, and then the big one will be Vertical Blue in June or July. Yeah.
Excellent.
That would be the main one. And then let's see about the SEMAS World Championships. I think Egypt not fully confirmed. Would be nice.
Yeah, and how about, I mean, how can people train with you, because they won't be coming to do ADA instructor courses anymore. So how do people get time with you in the
water? So what I've done for the first half year is I've set aside like blocks for coaching.
Right.
And whoever is interested, I'm here in Dahab most of the time. I have these little trips, but it's usually just a week, and the rest of the time I'm here. So if ever someone is interested, just send me a message, and we can see the available dates. And
Awesome.
So I'll be it will not be any more instructor courses, but I really want to focus on coaching, technical coaching, workshops, CNF, obviously.
Well, maybe I'll see you in springtime when I'm back for a bit of CNF coaching. I'm quite keen. So
pleasure.
Yeah. And then as soon as you have the chat to Mrs. Sadurska, let us know what's going on with this deep spot workshop. I mean, it's just
We will.
an idea for you, but now I'm announcing it to everybody.
Thank you. No, we will sit together in the coming days, and then we will announce it on social media.
Yeah. Everyone should get to Dahab at the moment. There's a lot of cool people back in town, and you know, it's not every day that some of my students were saying the other day. They were like, you were on the buoy next to us with Alenka and Katerina.
Yeah,
and they were just like, this is crazy. You know?
Magdalena was, I think Magdalena was here as well, and Mirella is coming next week, and yeah, it's a lot of very deep and strong women here right now.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Yeah, awesome. Right, bedtime. It's 3 days of midnight, 9:30. Mate, thank you so much. This has been brilliant. I look forward to going back over this. So as usual, everybody, the episode will go up straight up on YouTube. You can check Stefan's website, check my website. Stefan will be mostly based in Dahab for the winter. I'm going to be moving a bit. I'll be over in the Philippines for a bit of coaching after a well-needed holiday over Christmas. And then, yeah, we'll both be back in Dahab in May, and then look forward to sharing a house with you in VB.
On Long Island, yes.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gary.
And thanks, Stefan. And I'll see you tomorrow anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. All right. Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.